everything just fell. Everything is on the floor right now. So that's cool. That is also not right now. Oh. It's great because I can't actually see what anything looks like before the show starts. That's better, I guess. Sure, it's because the. Will you shut the blinds in the back? I was talking to the last time. Yes, that's better. Woo. Okay. Then just now double checking really, really quickly. Make sure everything is up and running on the interwebs. Before we get started. Oh, yeah. She's talking. It's happening. Things are happening. Okay. Shalom. Salutations. It's hard to get a better camera angle with the computer that I have right now, but it's okay because we're here and we're still doing things, and that's what's important. So I was going to post more like things to remind people about the streams, but I ended up not being able to do that because it's been a very, very crazy week. The most recent of which we got the baby Snippy snipped, and he's in a mood. He's in all of the moods. Right now he's in a carrier because he keeps trying to lick his stitches and run around the house, both of which are big, big no-nos when you have just gotten surgery. But he's super upset. I'm sad because he doesn't like me right now. Tear. Hopefully he'll be happy again after everything's done. We tried to put a cone on him, but he did not like that, and that made him run around more trying to get it off, and it's been a whole thing. It's been a whole thing, and that literally just started yesterday. Yesterday he came home from surgery so like tweaked out. Everything was freaking him out. He was scared of every noise. It was great. It's been a fun day. It's been a fun 24 hours. But to this book. So I actually took an extremely large chunk of time to read this book. I've started reading it a while ago. It was a long book, and it was kind of a boring book. It was not my favorite book ever, which I feel like on this live stream, I feel like I've been reading a lot of books that I have not been super stoked about. And I feel like it seems as if I just hate books. And I think that all books are bad, but I don't. I like books. I love books so much. I've just not had a great opportunity to pick books, especially because I don't have a ton of money to buy books. And I don't have the money. Like when I moved out to Hawaii, I was not able to bring over a lot of my favorite books in order to make room for like my clothes, bring over a wardrobe so I had clothes because I wouldn't be able to buy more, and bring over the books and stuff that I was writing. So I did not have the opportunity to pack books that I loved to read. And since those are being held hostage on the mainland, I doubt I will ever see them again. So I have to save up money to rebuy all of those books. But right now I don't have them. And I do have a couple books. I'll tell you at the end what I'm reading next. And we can check those out. A lot of those I do like a lot better than what I've been reading lately. I also did like Civil War. I thought Civil War was great. But this book, Optimizing America by Jarl Jensen, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I have no other idea how you would pronounce that. But it is definitely not what I thought it was going to be. So the book is heavily leaning on economic lingo and discussion and concepts. But it's not necessarily, the issue I have with it is it's almost like I am reading an essay someone wrote for an economics class, but then they threw like 2 pages of plot in front of it. Because that's how all of the chapters are set up. It's like 1 or 2 pages of the actual plot, and then the rest of the chapter is one big speech about that's just essentially reiterating and rephrasing the same concepts over and over again for the entirety of this book. And one, it's kind of boring. It was hard for me to read. It was hard for me to get through. And especially that was made so because I couldn't buy into the economic concept that they're trying to push. So basically what happens in the story is you got this guy named Justin, and Justin wrote a book about economics, and has this idea that he's absolutely in love with. We'll come back to the idea later, but he's in love with this idea, and he thinks this idea will completely save and reframe not only the American economic system, but it could like save every single country's government and economics, just period. He's super into this idea. So he's really good speaker. He's a really good speaker. When he's speaking, people are responding to it in a way that you wouldn't normally see. And they're responding to his ideas really, really well. So Justin's friend Evan end up going to this Evan ends up meeting this girl named Amy, who works for a guy that usually puts a lot of funding behind presidential candidates. This chick watches one of Justin's speeches and is like, oh my God, he's the guy we want to support for a run for president. Unfortunately, right now, Justin's not interested in running for president. But still, the money-making guy, the big money guy, his name is Bloomberg. Bloomberg's like, hey, I want to at least talk to you. They go to his house, talk for a little bit, and like essentially over like the first handful of chapters, just slowly chipping away at Justin and like, hey guy, you really should run for president. You'd be such a great president. You got such great ideas. You'll save the world. It's amazing. It's so great. And so it eventually gets to the point where Justin's like, yeah, I'll do it. Not based on whether or not I want to or don't want to run for president. I'm going to run for president because the ideas that I have are something that this world needs to be using and inputting and interacting with. So Justin ends up deciding to run for president. He is running against Spade, the current president Spade, who is the Republican ticket. But for reference, Spade is basically Donald Trump. He is described to be exactly Donald Trump. And Spade recently went over, he's Donald Trump in a world where the government really likes Donald Trump. So Spade just convinced Congress to abolish the amendment. I believe it was the 22nd Amendment. Don't quote me on that, where it says that a person can only be president for 2 terms, and now he's running for a 3rd term. And he's essentially like, oh my God, like this guy, who cares what people think about this guy? Do a smear campaign. It'll be great. We'll just get all the trash on him. It'll be great. And so you have these two kind of, it's mostly focused around Justin and his group. And then you also have just like quick bounces over to like the Republican side, which is like a lot of rich people, and Spade, which you don't see a ton of Spade, but you hear a lot about Spade. Over on Justin's side, they're just kind of brushing off all the stuff that he's saying. There's also like a couple romances, like Evan has like a fling with this. It's not really, they don't really get into it, but he's flirting a lot with the girl that introduced them to Bloomberg. Her name is Amy. Justin is falling for his ex, Kellyanne Kelly, who like they broke up in the past and it was horrible, and Justin was like distraught and terrible. They ran into each other again, and Connie Ann Kelly, I think is the name. Connie Ann Kelly was flirting him up, and he's just bowing down to everything she says. So turns out Kelly is also working for Bloomberg and is being used essentially as bait to try and draw Justin into the idea of working president more. And then those 4 become the hold, along with Bloomberg, become the major like section and major group of Justin's campaign team. So they're doing that. They're going around making speeches. Most of the book is making speeches. You have these like flings for a little bit. They end up they break and enter into a college campus. I think Carnegie Hall. They break and enter there because there's a riot, not a riot, but there's a protest, a massive protest outside that area. They were trying to do a speech outside of Spade Towers, but they ended up right outside Carnegie Hall. The cops were trying to arrest them for breaking and entering, and they're like, nah, man. So they just climb up onto a balcony and do the speech there. So cool, I guess. He's a hip president. And so they do that. There's a point where in this world, there's a lot of interesting technology things in this world. One of them that is recurring is this idea that there are completely driverless cars, and those cars are supposed to be 1,000 times safer than any other thing. Republican team, you see them getting a hold of the controls for Justin's car and essentially like having that car go haywire. It's speeding, it's driving them, running them into things, ideally to probably kill them. Not 100% sure. It does end up like breaking his arm, I believe. And I think his friend Evan ends up getting like a really bad concussion. But yeah, you see that ends up happening the day before a debate that Spade called against Justin. So he's like, hey, Spade's like, let's do a debate. You're a lone wolf, Justin. Let's do a debate. I can show you, put you in your place. Before that, they ended up going in this car. They're going on their way to do a speech at the UN. It gets hacked. They get into an accident. Justin is healthy enough to be able to continue the speech at the UN. But the Republican team is super upset, and they're still using this because in the car with them was the leader of the Islamic State. He is not a terrorist. He is just a government leader of Islam. But they're like, oh my God, he's hanging out with terrorists. This is what happens when you hang out with terrorists. He almost died. And so that's a whole thing that ended up happening. Didn't really bear into the plot much at all. Get to the debate, and obviously Justin makes Spade look like a fool. After that, this is where the only really interesting part of the book is, but it's not super interesting, but it's enough. So you get to the point where we're actually having the night of the elections, and Spade calls a national emergency because at this point it looks like Justin's going to win this. And Spade calls a national emergency because of something at the election center. It's not really clear what he's trying to make up about this, but he says like, oh, there's something at the election center. And then you see at the end, a bunch of federal officers storm the hotel that Justin and his campaign team are at and bust into their room and arrest them. So it's interesting. Like, that's an interesting thing to throw in there and I know it is part of a series, but God, I'm not interested enough to continue reading on. It really was every chapter. You get 2 or 3 pages of plot and then like 20 pages of the same redundant speech of this economics plan that I just could not buy into. Let's talk about that. So the plan that they had was, hey, we have our system right now. The government is giving loans to rich people, and then those rich people are like buying things or saving money and stuff, and it's not helping to pay the national debt. What we need to do is if we give direct deposits to everyone in the country, then they have more money to spend. That more spending money, then they'll spend. So they'll actually start spending money and like living a better life. Spend money, and then that money that they spend will go towards taxes. Taxes will then be used to go and clear up the national debt. So it's a circle that keeps like healing itself, and there's no damage done. That's just a lot of wrong. That's just not how the U.S. economy works. First of all, there was also a bit where we'll go through the full circle. So the first issue I have with going from the bank to deposits is his idea was you won't be creating debt, because the only reason we create debt is when we print money, we count that towards the national debt. so that way we can have set up a value for it. He says the way you avoid creating that debt is you just don't count it towards the national debt. It wouldn't lose its value. You just don't have any record for it or have any count for the money you're printing. It's fine. It's fine. Which I don't really want to get into that, but no, that's just not how things work. It's no, that's incorrect. So that's one. Two, the idea that spending would then go into money that would be like people would be encouraged to spend. Also in there, because people are spending more money, you would have more demand. It would need to hire more people. This book was published in 2017, and that is well around the time where this author should have known that online shopping was taking over a lot of industries. And because online shopping is taking over so many industries, that is causing a lot of brick and mortar stores to go out of business. Not even necessarily go out of business, but they're closing down brick and mortar stores. This is also a PSA to you guys. If you can, like, try and shop at like a physical store. I know everyone's like, hey, don't shop at big businesses because big businesses aren't going to be looking out for the little guy. But at the same time, when you put all of your money towards like an online shopping center, or if you don't spend money like at like a big store and shop little stores as well. But when you're doing online shopping, that money is not shared with the physical stores. Those are completely different systems. So when physical stores are not making up enough money, especially when they are having to lose money because a lot of time people go in store to return, then the first people that are going to suffer are going to be lower level employees. So they are going to get random pay cuts, random hour cuts, but they're still contracted with the company. So they would have to come in like 1 or 2 days a week for like a 5-hour shift. And you still have to be prepared for the next time they're going to call you in for whenever, but you don't have the money to pay the bills. That's a real thing that happens. So when you do give people more money, that money is not likely going to go towards like a shopping spree at the mall. It's probably going to go towards regular shopping on Amazon. And that is not going to create more jobs. That is going to put more of a strain on physical stores that are trying to keep up. And I feel like since this book was published in 2017, and it's so heavily weighing on the specifics of the economics of this entire situation, they should have known this, and this should have been brought up and understood or like referenced at all, but it was not. So that was an issue I had. Again, another issue was like, because the money in the taxes is going to be paid towards the national debt, then there's not going to be any issue here. One, like the store's going to take a cut of the money. They're going to take most of the money that is spent. So if there's like a $5 purchase, $1 maybe is going to go towards taxes. So that's $4 of what you gave out to people that is not going back. And of that $1, not all of the money we spend for taxes goes towards the national debt. Obviously, because there's so many issues with people, like, because a lot of people, we don't fully understand where the money of our taxes is going to, which is a massive issue we have with our government. It's great. Love America. But for sure, there's money going towards paying government employees. There's money going towards like building roads, repairing roads. There's other, like a lot of cleanups, jails and prisons. Those are areas where money is also going to be going. So of that, like $1, like I don't know the actual percentages and whatnot, but let's say like 5 cents is then going towards repairing the national debt. You see where I'm going and why there are so many holes in this issue, a lot of which are not addressed in this story. That's why it was so hard for me to keep reading, because it's mostly just like anecdotes rephrasing this entire idea. But from the beginning, I could not buy into the idea. So it's just a lot of me not really caring what's going on. The plot was kind of interesting. There's a lot of technology that they're talking about, because it's supposed to be, I think, 2024 when this is all going down, and there are a lot of technologies that are being addressed. Like there's, again, completely driverless cars. There's also these orb things, the orb things that hang up from your ceiling. You use your desk and your voice commands to manipulate and order this thing around, but it can basically do anything it, like, in the book, they order drinks to this orb. The orb shape shifts its face into that of a woman for you to talk to. It can also move from room to room if you have a track set up, and it set up this holographic looking room that looked like a golfing course for them to play golf on, which was super interesting. Wish we could have gotten more of the world, but it's fine. We also established in this world that there were holograms very much in place in almost a very realistic implementation of holograms. Like, you have a full, like, plastic dome that goes, like, super high, or plastic cylinder that, like, it can be as big or as small as you want it. There are people that you can plop it on a watch so you can have a hologram there, and that's how you implement a hologram. And then the projection on there can be real, or as Bernie Sanders' projections tended to be younger, fitter than he was. That was interesting to see the implementation of holograms and how they were used, and how they're like, oh my god, you could use that to, like, help with your campaign, so you can get to people that you wouldn't normally be able to get to. It would save energy, it would save money, it would be just a really efficient to do that. Another thing, as I mentioned Bernie Sanders just now. It's weird. This author kind of, it's like, some characters had their real names. Like, I believe him, I think it was Sean Hannity, also had their real names in the book. But there were also characters like Spade that were obviously supposed to be Trump, but was not actually given the name. And then there was also Fred Cruz. Crazy. That's such an original name. Who would have ever thunk it? But what was I going to say? Yeah, that was fun. There was also, when you're reading the book, because I was primarily talking about Justin and Evan, and, like, the team were following the good guys. But there was also this, like, it would pop in and out, like, a couple, like, every 2 chapters, you'd pop into a chapter about a random Republican, and most of them did not matter. Like, the idea was that you see all of these rich people doing all of their rich people things. One of them had, like, the coolest yacht in the world, and they're doing their rich people things. But then you would come towards the end when they're trying to figure out what to do with Justin and his campaign, and you see all of them there, but none of them are really important. There's one guy who's important, and that guy is the one that hacks into Justin's car and causes the crash. But otherwise, it's just a bunch of random characters who are in a room. They could have all been different, like, all individual people that had not been introduced earlier, and it would have had the same effect, because their stories just don't really. There's one talking about a pipeline, I believe they want to build in Alaska, but that has no bearing on the story whatsoever. It might be, again, it's very possible that this is all set up for the next book in the series, but I was not compelled enough to be interested in reading it at all. Another reason why I was super, super not interested, like, not along with it, because not only was I not on board for the economics plan, but this thing infuriated me, because the entire time Justin was super against the idea of talking about politics. The guy running for president would be in a, like, situation where he's talking about presidential stuff, where he's talking about running for president, or where he's answering questions about his presidency, and he keeps saying, "Oh no, let's not make this about politics, guys." What? Politics is part of the presidency. Like, he should not be running for president. I'm sure that in this world there is some high-ranking economics advisor position that he could take on, because really all he can do, skill-wise, he can give a good speech. So if someone else writes his speech, he'll be solid. But he can give him a good speech. But other than that, he can do an executive order to enforce his economics plan, and that's it. He has no understanding of anything else and how to work anything else. He was talking about how, like, everyone's like, oh my God, Justin, you should talk about charity and all the charity efforts we're going to do in like other countries. And he starts talking about, oh no, charity's useless because like, what are we going to do if we stop giving the charity? It's not going to work, which I understand. Like if we stop, like what charities are we doing to where if we ever have to stop giving the funding, they are still in a better place than they were before. His idea, like, let's do the direct deposit to every individual in the country like we are going to do here. Because if you stop doing that, that's not going to, like, it's fine. Nothing's going to change whatsoever. Because his idea is, like, if you do the direct deposit, then obviously, like, their government's just going to be able to completely reestablish itself and the economy is going to start booming. And I felt like that was such an ignorant thing to discuss, as if every country has a government that is looking out for its people. And just having that character actually say that was so infuriating to me. Like, you have a quote unquote good economics plan. People are backing your economics plan, but that is literally not all that a president does. Heck, I'm fairly certain if my like senior year government class is still with me at all, I'm fairly certain most of the country's economics is supposed to be the job of Congress as well. So this is not even in your job set. So you really are not prepared for what you would need to do as president, but it's okay because he got arrested the night of the election. And honestly, good for the American people. Sucks that Spade is still there, but you know, it sucks. Everything sucks at this point. Everything sucks. America in this book is just downhill slope. It's rough. It really did feel like, because if you've seen other No Ordinary Scholar videos, I kind of am able to use this platform to discuss things that I otherwise would have no one to tell them to. It feels like this author had just an idea that he thought was so great, but as the little about the author section at the end of the Kindle edition told me, he's not a medical student, but he is a doctor of sorts, something like that, and likely did not have a ton of economics friends to bounce these ideas off of. And so this was probably the only platform he thought of to be able to express these ideas outwardly. And it shows based on how much the author is trying to convince the reader of this idea by just reiterating it so many times. And just the fact that it, like, had this gone through an editor or maybe like a couple beta readers, I don't think this book would have looked anything like this. I really do not, because it is a lot of speeches that are super redundant. Like, I feel like had it gone through a couple editors, it would not have been able to come out like this. I do not think people would have approved of this. What else? Is there any other notes I had? No, that's basically it. So I will be posting my review of this book, as well as the one that I had for Warmonger, because I forgot to post that one on my Patreon. Both of those are going to be on my Patreon later tonight, and then I will submit them to Amazon this weekend. And anything else? You guys have any questions? I will be able to answer some questions here if you have any. Most of the questions I can probably answer later if anything pops up to you over at my Instagram account at Firestone2343. And then as well, check out my Patreon. I'll hit you back if you hit me up over there. Next book, I'm sure you're super interested in reading, because this is actually going to be my surprise, super cool book that I want to read for Halloween. It's not technically a Halloween book. Ooh, everything broke. Everything's shaking. But it's not technically a Halloween book, but I really like it. It scares me. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't understand what's going on. And this book is How to Drive Your Family Crazy on Valentine's Day. It is a 3rd grade reading level, but I'm still very much confused whilst reading it. So if you want to, I'm not sure if there's like a Kindle version of this book. You can check. Feel free to check. Go for it. Go look, see if there's a Kindle version so you can read with me tomorrow for the live stream tomorrow. And if not, then save the live stream, like run it through so that way I can still get that view early, but then like save it on the side in your watch later, read the book, and then come back and watch the live stream again. And then we can discuss it more at that Instagram account. But this is what I'm reading tomorrow. And next week, not next week, but for the next live stream I'm doing, I'm actually going to be reading another graphic novel called Kill Shakespeare. That's it. So enjoy the rest of your day. And until next time, valedictions, friends.